Well, children, today we are going to have a lesson on nutrition in plants. Let's begin with the introduction. All living organisms need food for their survival. Food provides us with energy to carry out various life-sustaining activities. Energy is locked in the form of chemical energy in food. To release this energy, the complex food that we eat must be converted to simple substances. This happens during the process of nutrition. Plants also perform the process of nutrition. They also need energy to perform various life-sustaining activities in their body. They absorb the nutrients from the soil and carry them towards leaves to make their food. Nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium are the major nutrients required by plants. Which are the major nutrients required by plants? Major nutrients required by plants. Which are they? They are nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium. Did you get it, children? Very great. Okay, now let's begin with our focus on nutrition. Okay, nutrition is the process by which the living organisms take in their food and use it for their growth and development. The components present in the food that provide us nutrition and help in our growth are called nutrients. Nutrition can be obtained in different ways by different organisms. The two main modes of nutrition in living organisms are autotrophic and heterotrophic nutrition. Which are the two main ways or modes of nutrition in living things? They are autotrophic and heterotrophic. Okay, now let's begin with the different modes of plant nutrition. The mechanisms by which organisms obtain their food are referred to as mode of nutrition. Organisms either synthesize their own food or obtain the food prepared by other organisms in various ways. There are two basic modes of nutrition: autotrophic nutrition and heterotrophic nutrition. Autotrophic nutrition. Auto means self and trophic means food. The organisms which have the ability to synthesize their own food are called autotrophs, and this process of synthesizing food is called autotrophic nutrition. Most green plants and cyanobacteria belong to the category of autotrophs. They make their own food with the help of chlorophyll and light energy from the sun, using carbon dioxide from air and water from the soil. This process is called photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is the process by which a plant uses the energy from the light of the sun to make its own food. It is a complex process that involves a series of chemical reactions which change the raw materials like carbon dioxide and water to the food product called glucose. Let us look at the following reaction that represents the process of photosynthesis. Now, carbon dioxide plus water, sunlight and chlorophyll give glucose plus oxygen. Okay, carbon dioxide plus water, sunlight and chlorophyll gives glucose plus oxygen. Sunlight is a major source of energy for photosynthesis. Leaves are the major sites where photosynthesis takes place. Leaves have some special organelles called chloroplast, which contains the green pigment chlorophyll. In plants like cactus, where leaves are absent, the green stems become sites for photosynthesis. The green stem of the plants also act as site of photosynthesis as they possess chlorophyll. Carbon dioxide enters the leaf through tiny pores called stomata. Stomata are mostly found on the underside of the leaves. Gaseous exchange between the plants and the atmosphere takes place through these stomata. Singular of stomata is stoma. Look at figure 1.2 to observe how stomata opens and closes during the gaseous exchange. Stoma is open, guard cells swollen and or turgid. Okay, stoma is closed, guard cells shrunken and flaccid or oblique flaccid. This is the chloroplast, this is the cell wall, this is the vacuole, and this is the nucleus. Children, I want you to do this sketch and even this about photosynthesis. Okay, that's the sunlight coming, and then chlorophyll is in the leaf, the carbon dioxide it gives out, comes in, and the oxygen is given out to us human beings. Alright, this is the way the photosynthesis takes place. Please draw these sketches, children, neatly in your books. Now, the root hairs present in the roots of the plants absorb water and transport it to the parts of the plant. There are special conducting tubes called xylem which carry water from the roots to the leaves and the other parts of the plant. Carbon dioxide combines with water using the stored energy in the chloroplast through a chemical reaction and produces food in the form of glucose. The glucose is then transported through special conducting tubes called phloem to different parts of the plant. Some of the glucose is used immediately by the plant for energy. Some is stored as starch and some changes to more complex substance like cellulose. The vegetables that we eat contain the store food. The oxygen released during photosynthesis is required for living beings on earth. Therefore, photosynthesis is a necessary phenomenon on the earth as it also maintains the carbon dioxide oxygen balance. Now let's begin with the activity. The following activity will help you to understand that the sunlight is necessary for photosynthesis. Now we will need beaker with twigs covered by glass funnel, air bubbles coming out through the funnel. Okay, keep this set up in the sunlight for some time, observe it and note it down and note down your observation. Next, keep the setup in the shade for some time and note down your observation. Now keep the setup in the dark and note down your observation. What do you observe? When the setup is kept in sunlight, you will find more number of air bubbles. These are oxygen bubbles coming out from the twigs than when it is kept in the shade. When kept in the dark, no air bubbles would be seen. This experiment proves that sunlight is necessary for photosynthesis. What is necessary for photosynthesis? Very important. It is the sunlight. Now let's see about Joseph Priestley, 1733 to 1804. Joseph Priestley was an English chemist. He discovered the presence of oxygen in air. Priestley was a brilliant teacher and Unitarian minister. He learned the theories of electricity from Benjamin Franklin. Although Priestley was an amateur scientist, his experiments with electricity and later with gases contributed enormously to the field of chemistry. Now let's go to the activity 2. The following activity will help you to understand that plants cannot make their food without enough sunlight. You need the following: a small plant in a tub. Now this is going to be interesting. Cardboard or aluminium foil, a pair of scissors, paper clips. Cut out two geometrical shapes like circle, square or triangle from a cardboard or aluminium foil. Make sure that the shapes are big enough to cover nearly half of the plant leaf. Attach the two shapes to two leaves using paper clips. Now keep the plant in a place where it will get plenty of sunlight. Observe the plant for 4 days. Make notes about weather conditions every day and add them to your observation. Let's see what happened. After 3-4 days, remove the shapes and observe the leaves that were covered by the cutouts. You will see that the areas covered are less green than the rest of the green plant. You will see that the areas covered are less green than the rest of the green part. This proves that those areas could not take part in photosynthesis as they were covered by cutouts. This experiment proves that sunlight is essential for photosynthesis. Now let's see the activity 3 and 4. Take 2 potted plants of the same kind. Keep them in the dark room for 2 or 3 days before you begin the experiment. Label them as pot A and pot B. Now keep the pot A in the sunlight. Where should you keep the pot A? In the sunlight, and pot B in the dark or in a dark box for 3 to 4 days. After that, pluck out 2 leaves each from the 2 plants and test them for the presence of starch. Boil the leaves in the water first, then boil them in alcohol over a water bath. Note down the color of the leaves. Now add a few drops of iodine on them. What do you see? The leaf from pot A turns blue-black. This proves that the presence of starch is in it. The leaf from pot B does not turn blue-black. As the plant was kept in the dark, the leaves could not produce starch. This proves that starch is produced only in the presence of sunlight. The activity must be performed under the adult supervision only. Now children, let's see how to conduct this activity. Okay, let's not rush. Then we go to activity number 4. Do you know where are stomata mostly found? Which part of the plant is involved in gaseous exchange? Let us do the following activity. You need 2 types of potted plants and petroleum jelly for this experiment. Coat the top layer of 4 leaves of one plant with a heavy layer of petroleum jelly and the bottom layer of the 4 leaves of the other plant with the same amount of petroleum jelly. Keep the plants in sunlight and observe them daily for 1 week. Do you find any difference in the 2 sets of leaves? You would see that the 4 leaves that had petroleum jelly on the underside wilted, whereas leaves with the petroleum jelly only on the top did not. Therefore, it proved from this experiment that plant leaves take in gases from the bottom surface, not from the top surface. It happened because a layer of petroleum jelly blocked the openings on the surface of the leaves, and the leaves could not take in necessary carbon dioxide gas or eliminate excess oxygen gas. Thus the leaves died. This experiment also proves that stomata are present on the bottom of the surface of the leaves. Children, this is also a great activity. See how much of research has been done by the former biologists and everything, so that we could get more, we could learn better, isn't it? That's great, don't you think so? Now let's turn to do you know. The largest leaves are found in the raffia palm, which grows in the islands of the Indian Ocean. The leaves can reach up to 19.8 meter in length. Now that's great. In a single year, 1 hectare of forest absorbs about 22 tons of carbon dioxide and gives out 16 tons of oxygen. Now that's huge. So what does that mean? We have to go on planting and planting, then we will be able to breathe in cleaner air. When a wheat seed germinates and grows into a fully mature wheat plant, it increases its mass about by 325 times. Goodness me! Now that's something great. Now let's go to this. Do you know? Forests are called the lungs of the earth. I love this term. What are called the lungs of the earth? The forests, as they provide us with enormous amount of oxygen for breathing. They also take in carbon dioxide, which is harmful for our health, and produce oxygen during their the plant's exhalation process. But every year, over 28 million acres of tropical forests are destroyed to create land for farming. The situation in which there is excessive cutting of trees in a forest takes place is called deforestation. It leads to global warming. Now, children, we all have to do something to stop deforestation. You think about it, make a write up, or give a speech on deforestation. How, as a person, you can stop global warming. And it's high time, children, otherwise, there will be no greenery in the future, and it's a very scary scenario. Okay, let's go to heterotrophic nutrition. Hetero means the stop. Heterotrophic nutrition. Hetero means different and trophic refers to food. The organisms that obtain their food from other organisms are called heterotrophs. And this process of obtaining food is called heterotrophic nutrition. All the heterotrophs depend directly or indirectly on autotrophic organisms for their food and energy requirements. Although most of the plants have chlorophyll and thus they can manufacture their own food, there are some plants which do not have chlorophyll, like humans and other animals. Such plants depend on the food prepared by other green plants. These plants use heterotrophic mode of nutrition. According to the mode of nutrition, heterotrophic plants can be classified into following types: parasite plants, saprophytic plants, symbiotic plants, and insectivorous plants. Once again, I will repeat: parasitic plants, saprophytic plants, symbiotic plants, and insectivorous plants. Now let's go further, as I guess you must be enjoying. I am enjoying the nutrition in plants. Parasitic plants. These plants get their food from another green plant known as host. Parasitic plants suck the sap from the stems of the host using special parasitic roots called haustoria. Haustoria penetrate into the host tissue and make connections with the conducting elements of host and draw nourishment. Only the parasitic plant benefits from this relationship and host dies eventually. Such a mode of nutrition is called parasitic nutrition. Now this is a parasitic plant and this is its flower. This is the parasite. This is the host stem. This is the leaf and this is inflorescence. Now some common examples of parasitic plants are Cuscuta, that's dodder, Orobanche, and Viscum, which is also called mistletoe. They do not have chlorophyll in their body and thus they get all their food from the host plants. So let us study about these plants. We begin with the Cuscuta. Cuscuta can be identified by the thin stems with the leaves reduced to minute scales. A Cuscuta attaches itself to an adjacent plant and wraps itself around it. If the host contains food beneficial to Cuscuta, the latter produces haustoria that penetrates conducting system of the host. Now this is a Cuscuta plant, okay? The picture showing haustoria in Cuscuta. Alright? The original root of the Cuscuta is in the soil, then dies and it gets all the nourishment from the body of the host plant. One Cuscuta plant can attach to a number of host plants such as alfalfa, clover, potatoes, chrysanthemum, dahlia, ivy and petunias. Now let's go to the next plant, that's the Orobanche. Orobanche, also known as broom grapes, are the root parasites of a wide range of plants having broad leaves. They lack chlorophyll and appear above the ground only when they flower. Like Cuscuta, broom grapes also have a number of hosts that include pea, bean, lentil, tomato, potato, capsicum, lettuce, etc. Or a branch cannot make its own food by photosynthesis as it does not have chlorophyll. It obtains all its nutrition from the host plant. Its long-leaf seeds germinate in response to the chemicals coming out from the roots of its potential host plants. The seedling does not emerge above the ground but forms a hostorium connecting it to the root of the host plant. This develops into tissues integrated into the host root. Now this is a branch plant, alright? Now let's go further. We are going to look into viscum. The common name of viscum is mistletoe. What is the common name of viscum? It's mistletoe. It is, now this is the viscum, alright children, it's a pretty thing. It is a parasitic evergreen shrub that grows high up in the branches of old trees. The plant extracts its essential nutrients and water by sending out roots into the bark of the host trees. The most common host of the mistletoe is apple tree, though it can also grow on other trees that have soft bark like oak, chestnut, black poplar, and various other fruit trees. Now we finished with the viscum. We are going to ponder about the saprophytic plants. Saprophytic plants get their nutrition from dead and decaying organic matter. They are usually white in color, although they can have bright colorful flowers. The common examples of saprophytes are Rhizopus, that's a bread mold, Muca, pin mold, yeast, and agaricus, that's a mushroom. These plants grow on rotting material and suck their nutrients using tiny hairs. Now this is the yeast, picture of the yeast, and this is the magnified yeast cell. This is how the yeast looks when it's magnified. Alright, now I want you to surf the net and do more research on all these things. Alright, let's proceed further to activity 4. Take a piece of bread. Now we all have bread in our homes and sprinkle a little water on it. Leave it for 2 to 3 days. Now this is a very easy experimentation or an activity, and I think you can do it. There is a cotton like black colored growth on the bread. These are saprophytic plants. For example, bread molds sucking their food material from the rotting bread. Now this is the bread mold, children, and this is agaricus. Alright, symbiotic plants. There are some plants that develop an association with other plants where both of them benefit from each other. One plant provides shelter while the other plant provides nourishment. These are called symbiotic plants. Now this is very interesting. It sounds more like give and take, isn't it? Now we are going to look into lichen. This also looks pretty. That's in figure 1.5 is a good example of a symbiotic plant. Lichen is a symbiotic association between the algae and fungi. Let's move further. They live in a close physical contact with each other. Algae provides food material to the fungus, and the fungus provides shelter, water and minerals to the algae. Another good example of symbiotic relationship is mycorrhiza. Myco means fungus and rhiza means root in Greek. The word mycorrhiza literally means fungus root. Mycorrhiza is a symbiotic association between the roots of some plants and fungi. The hyphae, that's the root-like organs of certain fungi, form specialized sheaths around the roots of certain plants. This fungal root coating is called mycorrhiza. The plant provides its food to the fungi, and the fungi help the plant by providing it with the necessary nutrients and by improving the plant's ability to store carbohydrates. Mycorrhiza is seen in some mushrooms and orchids. Now this is hyphae as seen under the overturned log. This is hyphae, okay? It's under the overturned log. And this is fungal hyphae and algae cell. Now this is the algal cell here and this is a fungal hyphae. The fungal hyphae here and the algal layer here. This is the fungal hyphae here, both the places, and here we have the algal layer. Now further let's proceed to the insectivorous plants. There are some plants that feed on the insects trapped within their leaves. Okay, the soil where they grow does not have enough nutrients, especially nitrogen. These plants obtain their nutrients from the insects' bodies. They are commonly called insectivorous plants or carnivorous plants. The leaves of insectivorous plants are modified in several ways for trapping insects. The trapped insects are killed by these plants and the nutrients of the insects' bodies are absorbed. The common example of insectivorous plants are pitcher plant, sundew, bladderwort and Venus flytrap. Now this is the sundew plant. See how the sundew plant captures this insect, and here we have the Venus flytrap with the insect. Okay, it is going to capture it. Pitcher plant. In the pitcher plants, leaves are modified to form pitchers or cup-like structures as in figure 120. See here you can see the pitcher plant. Okay, these pitchers are hollow tubes which open at the top and are completely or partially covered by a specialized flap or hood. The brightly colored hood often secretes nectar and attracts insects or other prey. The inside of the pitchers is lined with downward pointing hair. Once an insect is trapped by the pitcher, the hood closes down and the hair prevents the insect from crawling out. There is a small pool of water at the bottom of the pitcher. The insect drowns here and its body is decomposed by digestive acid secreted into the water by the plant. The result is a nitrogen-rich liquid food available to the plant. Now let's go to the sundew. The sundews are named so because their glandular leaf hairs glow like dew in the sun. Now this is really beautiful. These plants are found on sandy banks and other mineral soils that are poor in organic nitrogen and phosphorus. The leaves of sundew have tentacles with a sticky substance called mucilage. The leaf hair of these plants also contains stalk glands. These glands produce digestive juices and decompose the trapped prey. The digestive enzymes secreted by these glands increase in production once a prey has been captured. Now, insects stuck in the pitcher plant. Okay, this is the pitcher plant and this is how the insect is stuck in the pitcher plant. But what I wanted to do is surf the net again for this so that you will get a better view. Now let's see what the do you know has in store for us. Not all insects fall prey to the pitcher plant. Some aquatic flies spend their aquatic larva stage in the watery stomach of the pitcher plant, but they are not attacked by this plant. Adults of these flies, being small enough, can simply fly up through the tube and escape. These flies feed on the bacteria living in the drowned insects in the nitrogen-rich liquid. Okay, now let's go further. Now the points to remember. All living organisms carry out various life-sustaining activities for their existence. Energy is required to carry out the life-sustaining activities. Nutrient is a substance which the organisms obtain from the surroundings to derive energy for their growth and maintenance. Autotrophic organisms synthesize food with the help of light energy of the sun, carbon dioxide and water. Photosynthesis is the process by which a plant uses the energy from the sunlight to make its food. There are special conducting tubes called xylem which carry water to the food making cells. The plant food glucose is transported through special conducting tubes called phloem. The organisms which obtain their food from the other organisms are called what? Heterotrophs, and the process of obtaining the food from other organisms is called heterotrophic nutrition. Saprotrophic nutrition is the process by which the organisms feed on dead and decaying matter. In a symbiotic association, two organisms live in close physical contact with each other and are mutually benefited. Insectivorous plants trap insects to get nutrients that are deficient in soil. Now, important definitions. Enzymes, chemicals present in living organisms that help in digestion. Xylem, special conducting tubes present in plants that transport water from roots to the other parts of the plant. Phloem, special conducting tubes present in plants that transport food from leaves to the other parts of the plant. Autotrophic nutrition is the nutrition in organisms, mostly green plants, where they can prepare their own food from simple inorganic molecules. What are autotrophs? They are organisms which synthesize their own food. What is chlorophyll? The green pigment present in the leaves. What are heterotrophic nutrition? What is heterotrophic nutrition? Nutrition derived from dead or living organisms. Then we have the heterotrophs, the organisms that obtain their food from other organisms. What are insectivorous plants? Insect eating plants. What is nutrition? The process of obtaining and utilizing food. What are parasites? Organisms that derives its food from the living body of another organism. What are saprophytes? Organisms that derive its food from dead and decaying plants and animals. What is stomata? Tiny pores present on the surface of the leaves. What is symbiosis? A kind of association between two different organisms in which both are benefited. What is haustoria? It's parasitic roots that help in absorbing food from the host body. What is haustoria? It's a parasitic roots that help in absorbing food from the host body. So children, that was the end of this lesson for today. Have a nice time and enjoy going through this lesson again and again, and of course don't forget to surf the net. Thank you.